Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
Good afternoon, Michael Malice here, and let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us one of the most requested guests. You've been on this show before when I was at Compound Media. We have Thaddeus Russell, who is the author of Renegade History of the United States, which is one of the top 10 books that I always say are a must read. You are the host of the Unregistered podcast with Thaddeus Russell, the head of Renegade University. What brings you to New York?
To see you, of course.
Well, I can't hear him into my mics. So now this is a calamity. You're not here to see me. What are you really here? I don't hear him. He's not talking.
Hi, Michael. I'm
Okay,
always here to see you. Now, I had a couple events here. I just did a debate last night at the Soho Forum on postmodernism and libertarianism, which is a very alien concept to a lot of people.
Did you win?
I won in a way. I won. I increased the number of people who favored the position that I was defending, which was good, that postmodernism and libertarianism are simpatico.
The Oxford style.
Yes.
So how it works is whoever convinces more audience.
I know how it works. So
I'm explaining to the audience.
Okay, sorry.
They might not be as smart as you, which is probably the case. A lot of cretins in my crowd. Because you're very bright. So the odds are pretty high they're not going to be smart as you.
Don't put down your audience like that. You know?
Well, they know their place.
Okay.
They're not even verified. Well, I guess
Neither
neither
am I.
are you. I know, that's the
Pisses
joke.
me off because I know once I got to the level, they stopped giving out.
Is that what happened?
checks.
Is that what they told you?
Yes, right before I got to the level where you can get a check, they stopped giving out checks. So I'm just a plebe.
The computer's just completely gone crazy. No, I don't know what's going on with the screen. No, but the how it's annoying because if everyone is already stacked against your opponent,
Totally.
There's nothing they can do. There's only such a small ceiling.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm assuming everyone came in very skeptical of your position.
Completely. There are only 7% who voted for the proposition I was defending before the debate started. So yeah, it tells you where they were standing. And there were 33% defending his side of it. And I gained by 11%, but he gained by 30%. Now,
So he won.
he won totally.
Oh,
Yeah.
he won by every metric.
Yeah, well, sort
Other
of.
than you doubled your score.
Yeah,
I guess.
I increased. I mean, I'm just happy that I got that many libertarian, and there was a lot of sort of Randian objectivists in the crowd who were like, really hate that position that I'm taking.
Sure.
So I found it to be a win. I also just thought I won the debate, period. But
Well, I mean, that is a postmodernist position.
that's
You
right.
could
Well, you have
basically
to-
decide whatever you want.
you have to watch it for yourself. But yeah, no, it was good, and I convinced a lot of people, which I was surprised by. I expected to convince very few people because it's a very tough sell.
Okay, so I come from the Ayn Rand school.
I know.
And I don't mean just the BDSM stuff. I mean also the epistemology and the other fun stuff.
Yeah.
So explain to me what you mean by postmodernism. And what I also want to know is this the common definition of postmodernism in academia?
Yeah, I mean, I think my reading of postmodernist texts, including Foucault, is the most important postmodernist thinker. He's the one who's most cited in academia now. Is pretty common. And I think that what the readings of critics of postmodernism, people like Jordan Peterson very famously, Sam Harris to some extent, and this guy Stephen Hicks, who's written a book attacking postmodernism, who was Jordan Peterson's mentor on the subject.
Oh.
And
he's from the Ayn Rand Institute, isn't he? Or affiliated with them
he's
somehow.
definitely a Randian.
Yeah, they sell his
objectivist.
book. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, he's a Randian objectivist. My view is their reading is very, very different than common readings.
Okay.
And in fact, I think most of them don't read. That's the problem. Hicks certainly has. He's read some, although his book contains so few quotes from the text that I actually wonder how much he knows it. But people like Peterson and Harris, they really don't to They really haven't read it. It's very clear.
Oh, so it's all secondhand.
It's, yes, secondhand or even worse. That's right. So everything Peterson knows about postmodernism comes from Hicks's book, and everybody, I don't want to throw the guy under the bus, but there are several, if you Google Stephen Hicks, postmodernism, you'll find some pretty devastating critiques of his book online that are very well done, that show that it's poorly sourced, that he misattributes quotes, that he actually makes up quotes. It's pretty shoddy scholarship, frankly.
This is basically, from an academic perspective, calling him the N-word.
You could say that, yeah.
I can't. Maybe you can.
You mean negligent? Yes. He's definitely negligent. So it's a tough call because what I'm arguing is that there is what postmodernism does is simply call into question truth claims.
Okay.
And so all postmodernists ask really is that we be skeptical of truth claims of any kind.
Thank you.
And that we try to tell the history of them. So
wait, hold on. No. That claim is not accurate because you're saying that all postmodernism says is that we should be skeptical of truth claims. That is a position that many schools of thought can have. It's not unique to postmodernism, nor does it define
right.
it.
Well, let me finish what I'm saying, Mr. Malice.
Sure, Mr. Perot.
Perot.
Yeah, can I finish? Can I finish?
Oh, was that Ross, what he did?
Yeah, when he was with Gore and Larry King.
Late, great Ross Perot.
Yeah, I love him.
Do you?
Yeah, of course. Don't you remember why he quit the presidential race?
Oh, I think you told me. What was it?
I don't have to tell you. It was the news. He said because the Republicans are going to crash his daughter's wedding and make her out to be a lesbian.
What? I never heard that before.
In 92.
About his what? About his daughter?
Yes, you did not know this? Ross Perot quit the presidential race in 92 in the summer, even though he was leading in the polls, because he said the Republicans were going to crash his daughter's wedding and make her out to be a lesbian.
Huh. Is she a lesbian?
No.
Oh. Why would
he might be.
Oh, right, because he was running a third party.
Yeah.
Can we get back to the more important issues?
Yeah, you can finish.
So, so postmodernists is not just that they call for skepticism, they also call for the writing. They also say that any truth claim you can find in history. You can go back and see that it was originated by a particular person or group of people at a particular time at a particular place, right? So it doesn't come out of nature or God. Like, here's an example. Jews, as you know, we talk about this a lot on your show, were once considered black, right? And that was just a truth. And scientists were the ones who made that discovery by, examining the skulls of Jews and looking at their behaviors and saying, oh, well, they clearly are more like African Americans or Africans than whites. And it was just absolutely true according to science. And I'm talking about scientists at Harvard and at the Sorbonne and at Oxford and Cambridge. This was the common knowledge, right? Consensus. And you were considered to be crazy if you thought otherwise. Now, of course, it's just the opposite. Now Jews are just as white as anyone else, right?
Well, that's not been my experience.
Yeah?
Yeah, are you kidding?
What? You're pretty white to me.
Well, that's the Jared Taylor quote, yes. But I mean, I don't think anyone, Jews or non-Jews, thinks Jews are just as white as everybody else, or any ethnicity, or Italians either.
But your people have been pretty assimilated, don't you think, since before World War II? I mean, many
it depends
Jews.
What you mean by assimilated.
Many Jews, yeah, exactly. So they're assimilated and they're considered to be Caucasian. Okay, so they were not considered to be Caucasian before World War II.
I don't think that's accurate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I know it is accurate.
Well, I thought I'm going to be skeptical of truth claims.
This is in my book.
I'm going to be skeptical of truth claims.
That you say so much about.
Yeah.
So it's in my book. It's in that chapter on the Jews.
I didn't say the book's all true. I'm skeptical of truth claims.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
Okay. So Foucault, that's essentially Michel Foucault, who's the most important postmodernist, the most...
Wait, do you think that the median opinion is that Jews and WASPs are essentially interchangeable?
They are treated as such, yeah.
By whom?
By the mainstream media.
I don't see it that way at all.
The New York Times does not identify people as... The Jew Michael Malice has a show called You're Welcome.
Well, why would they be talking about me at all? But I mean, in all seriousness, they very much distinguish many times between Jews and non-Jews.
Sure, but they're not considered a separate race from
Correct.
whites. That's what I'm saying.
But an ethnicity is just a race you approve of.
I understand that. So before World War II, as you well know, they were considered to be a different race.
Right.
Okay, and now they are not.
But
right?
just because they're not a separate race does not mean they're essentially identical to Caucasians.
Sure. So you're kind of missing the point here. So these were truth claims in both cases, right?
Okay, sure.
Both that they were black or non-white earlier before before World War II, and now the claim is that they're Caucasian, just like me, right? We're all I'm quarter Jewish, but that Irish are the same race as Jews, all Caucasian. On the census, you're supposed to check Caucasian,
right?
Right. That's sort of a ridiculous idea, anyway. Now, those are truth claims.
The Caucasus are actually closer to where I'm from than WASPs.
Well, that's true. You have greater claim to being a Caucasian than the Irish or the Spanish. But that, again, that is our current racial regime in this country, right? Everyone in Europe is considered to be a Caucasian, or everyone from Europe, which is
except for Sweden.
Absurd. No, even them.
Well, not anymore.
Why not?
Because they've taken over.
The Swedes have taken over?
No, the refugees.
I see. Right. The browning of Sweden.
Yeah.
So what Foucault did,
no-go zones,
and others say that, well, these truth claims clearly change over time.
Sure.
Right? There's a consensus in society about something at one point, and they change the consensus radically. And that goes for science as well. So quite a while ago, everyone believed that the sun revolved around the earth.
Sure.
And you would be burned at the stake if you thought otherwise. You were absolutely crazy. That was an absurd thing to say, that the earth revolved around the sun, right? You were actually burned at the stake.
Is it? I don't know that was universally the case, but let's say that's maybe in Western Europe.
And then Copernicus comes along,
Sure.
and Galileo come along,
Sure.
and they say, well, actually, we think it's the other way around, right? The earth revolves around the sun.
Sure.
Well, they got into a lot of trouble, right?
Sure they
But
did.
finally, that changed entirely, and now we all completely agree. There's a universal consensus that the earth revolves around the sun. Well, so that tells you that truth claims are always open for skepticism and questioning.
But just because people have gotten something wrong in the past
Right.
doesn't mean they will always get it wrong, and truth is not a thing. For example, let's suppose I asked you to think of a number between 1 and 100, if an integer, because you always say pi. If I sit and rattle off every integer individually, at some point I'm going to get the right number. So simply because ideas have changed and claims have changed does not imply that at no point is that claim not correspond to reality, which is what I would consider, and most would consider, a definition of the word truth.
Right. So I kind of lost my train of thought there because you didn't let me eat breakfast. Yeah.
It's 12:45.
Yeah,
if
I
you
know.
haven't eaten breakfast by now,
I'm on West Coast
that window
time.
is closed.
I just got here from LA. Come on.
And boy, is my jargon tired.
Okay, now I remember. So the fact that all these other truth claims about everything from the sun revolving around the earth to Jews being black,
Sure.
these have all changed over time. So why do we now know that we're right about some things?
Okay.
That the questions are closed forever.
Yeah, that's an absurd. It says anyone who says the questions are closed forever is an absurd.
Thank you.
Is
So
absurd.
that's a postmodernist position you just took right there. That's
Sure.
all that means.
But I don't think that that's remotely close to unique to postmodernism.
It's not. It's not. You know who else takes that position? Most scientists.
Yes, of course.
Exactly. So, right. So I had someone on my show, Connor Habib, who has a background in science, and he said, yes, every scientist I know is basically a postmodernist because they say, no, there's never a closed question. Now, that is not the way society operates, right? Scientists have been doing that work, generally speaking, for centuries or millennia.
I got to interrupt you because I don't understand. If they've been having this thinking for millennia, then how can they be postmodernist?
That is a part of the postmodernist. That's a fundamental part of the postmodernist claim.
Okay.
Scientists haven't been running around saying this, right? They've just been acting that way because they just go and study things relentlessly and they never think that things are closed.
Right.
They're still studying the theory of gravity. In fact, they're still revising the theory of gravity. They found things in outer space that are moving differently than they thought according
Sure.
to the theory of gravity just recently, right? So now scientists don't say that philosophically. They haven't stated that, but they just do it.
They do state that all the time.
Okay, but postmodernists as a philosophy say, look, this is the basis for questioning everything.
Sure.
Okay, and questioning every truth claim, calling into question, in fact, truth itself. That there is a truth, an absolute.
Is this phone? Wall Street Journal alert. Find my iPhone. Who's looking for their iPhone? It's in the studio. Great work, guys. Great work. Jesus Christ. I love this show.
Is this, yeah, okay. I feel like we're not getting off to a good start here.
I disagree because
Okay.
I'm very interested in this perspective and
Okay.
I've never heard it spelled out. And I
Okay.
think many people as well have not.
Fair enough. So it is not just calling into question particular truth claims, it's calling into question the idea of a universal, absolute, eternal truth at all.
Okay, sure.
Which I know for a Randian objectivist, that's hard to take. Or just people reject that on your side of the ledger.
I think Rand claimed that facts are contextual.
Yeah?
So I don't think she spoke of eternal truths other than perhaps like rules of logic, but I wouldn't know that she would call logic true. Because logic is used to demonstrate truth as opposed to it being true or false.
As you know, I've never read a word of Ayn Rand.
I did not know that.
But, oh, really? I thought I've told you that. But every Randian I've hung out with, less so you, but others have just completely rejected this idea. They've said, of course there's truth and there's reality, and what we have to do is go find it. We have to figure it out.
Well, that's not the same as an eternal truth, right? Saying a reality is an objective reality, which she does say, is not the same as saying, I can make this statement and it's eternally true. I think those are different claims.
But does she not think that there is an objective reality that will never change?
Well, no. What do you mean by never change? I mean, she's not going to deny that, like, weather changes, climate changes, the earth changes. What do you mean by
like principle? So the theory of gravity that'll never change.
No. Whether gravity, as it is at it, the force, right, will not change. Our understanding of it will certainly change.
Right. Okay. So that is what postmodernists call into question itself. So
The force or the understanding?
So what I'm hearing is that she and Randians and maybe you presuppose that there are things outside of human consciousness that will never change regardless of what we think of them. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. That is where postmodernists and Randians differ.
Okay. So you're saying, so I don't want to be Kathy Newman. It sounds to me like you're saying that a reality by its nature is not either objective or permanent or both?
It is that reality is a construct of human beings.
So, but what I don't understand is if humanity never existed, are you saying reality wouldn't exist?
Yes. That human beings create reality. So each one of us has a different perspective on reality, right?
But if we're having a perspective on something, that something exists independent of us.
But if everyone has a different perspective on something, then how do we know what the thing is?
Even if we don't know what that thing is, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. We could all be wrong. Like if there's a room full of blind people, that tree is still going to have a certain color.
Right. So I'm an agnostic, and postmodernists, I think, generally are agnostic on this question.
Okay.
There might be a God. There might be an eternal God. There might be some other eternal truth. Okay.
Okay.
Outside of human consciousness.
Sure.
It's just that we haven't seen that yet. It hasn't been proven yet because every single scientific theory has been revised or overthrown.
Given how much of your audience are Rand fans, why haven't you actually sat down and read any Ayn Rand?
Unlike you, I just don't like any of the Randians I've ever met.
Michael Malice here. I just want to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by Wix, which is the best and easiest way to create a professional website. If you go to letthatbeyourwelcome.com and click the link at the bottom of the page, Wix will give you 10% off any premium plan. What's Wix? With Wix, you can build your own website. You can start from scratch or use one of their 500 templates. It's basically like if you know how to use PowerPoint, you know how to use Wix to make your own website. They've got this drag and drop website builder so you can easily customize your site. If that's too much for you to handle, that's fine. They've got something called ADI, Artificial Design Intelligence. You answer a few simple questions about you and your business, and Wix will create a stunning website for you. You can start building your website for free today by going to Wix.com. And if you go to letthatbeyourwelcome.com, we put that together for this show using Wix's technology. And let me tell you all, I like buying domain names for people that I hate. You want to own your own URL and have your own website. So when people goggle you on dates, job interviews, things of that nature, you want your site to be the first thing up, and Wix will help make that possible. Let's get back to the show. But here's another example. Let me see if I can understand this. Okay. A lot of times, like I have had experiences that have changed my thinking, right? And you and I have both met these libertarians who are fedora hat tipping libertarians who have a chip on their shoulder, very skeptical types. And it's like, well, prove it to me. Like, for example, you're a dad. For me to come up to you, be like, prove to me your love for your son, it's just like, go fuck yourself. I first of all, I don't owe you anything. Second of all, you will never understand my love for my son. I mean, it's something. But since you can't tell it to me or, quote, prove it, does it make it any less real or less valid?
Yeah. So I would say my love for my son is simply the way that I experience him.
Sure.
Or the way I think about him.
But my point is, if I can't explain or understand something, that doesn't mean that thing doesn't exist.
Sure. It exists in my head, but you can never perceive it in any way that would correspond with the way I perceive it.
Well, I could,
our perceptions of my love for my son, yours and mine, will be always different, right?
There's a difference between different and incomprehensible.
Okay.
With regards to your son, it is incomprehensible. I will never have that actual feeling.
And therefore, what is true there?
However, well, it's true that you love your son.
Well, but what does that mean, though?
It means that he is a high value to you.
I haven't said that. You just said that.
I know. Am I wrong?
So that, well, so far so good.
Okay. Right. I mean, the idea that I will not have your feeling of love for your son because I'll never be you, I'll never be him. However, for example, I had Dave Smith on this show, right? It sounds like you're saying if empathy isn't exact, it's impossible.
I'm saying that our perceptions of anything will be different. Our perceptions of this table, this room, this conversation, everyone, right? So that's perspectivism. That's another term for this, right?
Sure.
That's a postmodernist position. right? Which means that how do we know which of us has a clearer access to truth there?
But if we're not in contradiction, we could both be telling the truth.
That's possible.
Sure.
But again, it's open to skepticism, right?
Of course. I'm not denying
So my
that.
love for my son could be, according to someone else, delusional.
Sure.
It could be,
It's
right?
biohormones, whatever.
Yeah, right, exactly. So again, where is the truth? Where is reality? Is it even possible to find truth in this question as to what my love for my son is?
But I mean, for example, I'm having trouble wrapping my head around what you're saying, because I gave you the address of this studio.
Mm-hmm.
That was true. I gave you the true address.
Right.
And Joe Rogan has this funny joke, and it's very much a stoner joke. He's like, think about language. I have some ideas in my head. My mouth makes some words, and now you have that idea in your head. And it's funny, but the thing is, I gave you information.
Mm-hmm.
You acted on that information accurately.
Yes.
And now you are here.
Yes.
So was what I said to you not true?
So right. So within there. So what a lot of postmodernists say, and I agree with this, and this is how I operate in the world. There are logics, right? There are creations of logics in the world, right? There's systems of logic.
Okay.
Various systems of logic.
Oh my God. Jesus fucking Christ. This sounds like those minarchists who want to separate government and state. And it's like, this is the truth that I like. This is the truth I don't. So I'm just going to have a different word for it.
Well, you do agree, don't you, that there are multiple logics in the world? Now,
no, I don't. There's Aristotelian logic.
But you do agree, don't you, that there are many people who don't abide by Aristotelian logic?
I do not agree. Logic is not up for your opinion. It is guiding your principles whether you like it or not. Okay. I can't eat my cake and have it too, to quote the Unabomber.
Yeah. Okay. So many people certainly have religious faiths and other faiths like that, and other belief systems don't abide by the Aristotelian logic. They think of the world in very different ways than Aristotle
They do abide
would.
by it. They might not abide by it mentally, but they have no choice but to abide by it in terms of their actions.
They have no choice?
Correct.
I could have not come to the studio.
That is still abiding by Aristotelian logic.
I could have read the address differently.
That's still abiding by Aristotelian logic.
Why?
Because you are making choices based on information does not contradict logic.
So I abided by Aristotelian logic this morning by coming to the numbers you gave me.
No, that's not a logic question. That's an information question.
Oh boy, I'm having trouble here. Okay.
I think what you're saying is, and again, please correct me because I'm trying to understand. If someone refuses, here's another, let's take a parallel example.
Okay.
If I refuse to think that eating lots of sugar and carbs is going to make me fat, and I just eat as much sugar and carbs as I want, I'm going to get fat.
Right. Well, that is one way of looking at that.
Right. So my point is,
and there are
when you
other
say,
ways
I don't listen to logic, it's like, that's nice. You don't have to. But the logic's listening to you, essentially.
Okay. That is one way of looking at what happens when you eat sugar and carbs.
Okay. What's the other way?
Other ways, people look at it differently. They look at you have become not fat, but a different size. There are different perspectives on that.
There is no different perspective that body fat is a measure of obesity.
So within the logic that we live in, within this culture, within this time and place, I would say, yes, I guess you're fat, right?
No, I'm saying if you eat a lot of sugar and carbs, your body fat level will increase. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying this is the consequence.
Okay. Well, let's go with that. So sugar and carbs increase body fat.
If you increase your sugar and carb intake, everything else being equal,
That's right.
yes, you will increase your body fat.
Now, you well know that the ideas about dieting and nutrition have changed radically, even in recent years, have they not? So about 10 years ago...
The government lied.
About 10 years ago, everyone believed for sure...
No, they did not.
Can I finish?
There was no... No, I'm not going to let you finish, because 10 years ago, there was no dietary consensus. So whatever you make a claim on this is going to be fallacious.
What? Excuse me. So... do you not remember the Atkins diet? Do you not remember that everybody was fat phobic?
No, the Atkins diet is not being fat phobic. The Atkins diet is being high in fat and low in carbs.
Okay, sorry, there was a time, wasn't it Atkins that was anti-fat?
Atkins makes you eat bacon all the time.
Okay, Michael Malice. Let me get through this here. So, was there not a time when it was much more commonly believed that fat was the problem than carbs?
Common and consensus are not synonymous. And this is you're the author of Renegade History. You know damn well that the people on the margins are the ones affecting change. So 60% of the people are never going to have any ideas at all.
There were many, am I wrong? There were many scientists and nutritionists and much of the public that believed that fat was the main problem to...
10 years ago. Look it up.
Oh, boy. I mean,
You're full of shit if you're claiming this. 10 years ago, there were no scientists who thought
maybe
eating...
15. I mean, I lived...
No, it's the 70s. And this was the government, and this is because of the sugar lobby.
In the 1990s, the supermarkets were full of low-fat items. Are you disagreeing with that?
There's a difference between saying something is in the supermarkets and this is what science believes.
Well, that's where that came from. It came from...
No, it didn't.
Nutritionists...
No, it didn't, Thad. It came from the government because of sugar subsidies in the 70s and corn syrup subsidies.
Okay.
It did not come from science.
It doesn't... So the government hired no scientists to do this?
It hired a few scientists, but the idea this was a consensus or even majority point of view is not accurate.
Among scientists?
Correct. And nutritionists. That's what I'm telling you.
So why then was it unknown that...
It wasn't unknown just because you haven't heard of it.
Okay. So there was...
Do you want to stick to an issue that you kind of have more of a background in? Because this is... I mean, if you were talking about baseball or whatever, I wouldn't know, this is something I know a bit about.
Sure. I absolutely know that the government employed scientists for decades to make that claim. Yes?
The
National Institute for Health.
Do you disagree?
The National Institute for Health, right? Which is where that comes from.
You're conflating three things.
Employed nothing but scientists.
You're conflating three things. You're conflating this belief exists, this belief is popular, and this belief is a consensus.
Okay.
These are not identical claims.
Okay. Let's get back to the main point here.
Sure.
Okay. Do you agree that science and scientists have revised their own truth claims over time repeatedly, in fact, continually?
I do not disagree at all.
Okay, continually, right?
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. Okay, so anytime a scientist or science makes a truth claim, postmodernists would say, let's examine the history of this.
Absolutely.
And let's be skeptical that it is a true... Okay, that's it. So
that's not it. You're saying that's it, but then you're also making these all other corollaries. That part we're all in agreement with, including Rand.
No. Because, well, maybe, I don't know. You tell me. I don't know about Rand. But
I am telling you about Rand.
But does she not believe that there are some things that are universally eternal and outside of human consciousness?
There's a difference between something exists independently of human consciousness and this truth claim is universal. These are not synonymous statements. A claim is made by a person. Existence exists without people.
Yes. Okay, so that is where I am agnostic. Now, how do you know that there are things that exist outside of consciousness if we have never arrived at some truth?
Because there's nowhere to go outside of consciousness. You can't leave reality by definition.
Oh. Well, wait, hold on. Those are two different things. Consciousness and reality are two different things.
Correct.
So consciousness is not necessarily reality, is it?
Correct.
Okay. So then how do we know there is a reality outside of consciousness?
Because the universe, by definition, is that which exists.
By definition, whose definition?
Logic.
Logic was invented by what? God or nature?
Logic was...
Or human beings?
Was discovered.
Discovered?
Because it's an aspect of reality.
Where was logic discovered? Where did they find that? Where
Greeks?
Did they see that? No. Where did they find logic out in the world?
By observation and non-contradictory principles.
Okay. So that was a discovery or a production?
Discovery.
And it was not an invention, you're saying?
Correct.
So logic just came, it's in the world, it is immanent in the world.
Correct.
And Socrates, etc., just found it.
Correct. Discovered it, yes.
It did not come from Socrates' mind.
No, it came from reality and his mind, which he used to perceive reality.
And how do you know that?
Because I read what he said and I'm listening to him.
So I read what Socrates said too. How do I know that what his mind corresponded with this thing called reality?
Because you are acting. First of all, it's very important to judge people by their actions and not by their words, right? Do you agree with that?
Okay, maybe. I don't know.
You don't act as if you don't think the laws of logic correspond to reality.
Logic is a language. How about that?
No.
Okay.
Logic exists independently of
Has
humans.
logic changed since it was invented in ancient Greece?
It was probably been developed, absolutely.
Okay, so it's changed, it's been revised.
You're conflating two separate things. There's a difference between revision, I'm fixing the house, and demolition, I'm destroying the house. And you're bouncing back and forth between the two of them.
Revision of a core claim or of any claim suggests that maybe it wasn't so true in the first place, and maybe it won't be true in the future.
No, it suggests that it was largely true, and now we're refining it.
I see. Okay. Well, That leaves me skeptical about the whole project.
You should be skeptical. I agree with you.
Okay.
We should be very skeptical.
Well, skeptical that it might have any correspondence with reality.
So are you saying that there's nothing that corresponds to reality?
I'm saying I'm skeptical of it. I'm an agnostic on it. It might, and I operate in this world with this particular logic, generally speaking, according to the rules of logic. Like I saw the numbers that you gave me for the address, and I came to that place.
But you're saying you're being an agnostic, but you're not acting in that way.
Right. I don't in the world, in this world that I inhabit. Now, I don't know that the way I'm perceiving the world is true in any way. It's possible. I mean, I don't think about this. I don't act in the world, but it's possible.
Possible or probable?
No, not probable. Possible. It is possible that I am perceiving the world in a radically different way than it really is. It's possible that there is some absolute reality out there that I have not perceived, that I'm acting in, not in accordance with it.
That is the religious perspective. That only God is capable of seeing reality.
Well, I think it's more of a religious perspective to believe that there is an absolute reality, a universal reality outside of human consciousness that we can never prove or never see.
You don't have to prove it. Here it is. You can't step out of it. There's nowhere else to go.
So this is what's absolutely real about this.
That we're talking?
How do you know?
Because I can hear you.
And?
This is like college stoner talk.
No, it's the fundament. It's the basis of this.
This is like, what was his name? Bishop Berkeley? I disprove it thus when he kicked the rock?
Again, this is not what most people spend time talking about in postmodernist circles.
So what do they spend most time talking about?
What I told you about. You take
questioning science?
They're mostly interested in social questions.
Okay.
And in the use of language.
Sure.
And so, for instance, Derrida's key insight was that language does not correspond with reality necessarily. That language, we cannot arrive to truth through language. That's a key insight right there.
Okay.
So because language, if you like a language, take any word in the dictionary and tell me what it means. Okay. What you do is you look at synonyms, right? Other words that correspond to that. And that's how you know what it means in our system. And then there are multiple synonyms, each referring to another. Each word refers to another word, and that's the only way we make sense of it. Now, how do we know which of those synonyms is closer to reality?
This is not how I learned, because I was trilingual by the time I was kindergarten. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I always recommend to people is to have their kids learn another language, because I agree that if you grow up thinking in only one language, you're going to be trapped by things like wordplay and puns and not going to be able to think conceptually.
Right.
So for me, a lot of it was toggling between English and Russian mentally to learn on definitions of words, because if you are using language referentially to other words within that language, I agree that it is going to be kind of circular and a trap.
Yeah, it's a closed system.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So how do we know which word within that system is any closer to truth outside that system?
So you're saying that, let me understand this. So if I use the word tall, there's a group of people and I can't say this is the tallest one?
You can within the logic of that system, yes. But what is there an absolute truth there? What does tall mean?
So you're saying unless truth
what does tall mean? Does it mean over 5'4"?
No, it means I'm using a relative term in this.
Exactly, it's a relative term, just like all of them.
So
are
you saying unless truth is absolute, it's impossible? Contextual truth is not actually truth?
We are questioning the claim that there is such thing as an absolute truth.
What I'm asking is, are you saying that if absolute truth cannot be established, contextual truth is not actually truth?
Contextual truth cannot be truth. I suppose. Yeah. I mean, again, they're always being revised. They're always being changed. These ideas of truth and what is true and what is not true and what is real and what is not real.
If we have 5 men...
And so then how do we know when we're right?
If we have 5...
How do we know when we're right? Because everybody is always changing their minds about what is true and real.
But just because people disagree doesn't mean none of them are right.
So people have changed their minds about every single question, including gravity, including the sun and the earth.
Well, we just did the thing with the number from 1. So again, if you're picking a number between an integer between 1 to 100, and there's 100 people, and each one guesses a number, one of them is going to be correct, no?
Within the logic of mathematics.
So is that contextually, it's not a mathematical question.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, okay. Contextually, yes. Within that system, yes, there are, I would say, and a lot of postmodernists would say, yes, within particular logics, there are truths within the logic, but that doesn't correspond to some external truth that is eternal and universal.
Correct. So all I'm saying is, so you do agree that contextual truth is possible?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So within the context of us having this interview today, there was I guess you would call it a truth. I mean, I wouldn't use that word, but it was real or consistent with the logic, at least.
Sure.
That I come to this particular address.
Sure.
Today at 12:30. Yes.
And if there were 100 people and each one guessed what number you're thinking of, one of them would be true.
Within that logic, absolutely.
contextual
within
truth.
math, right?
Okay.
When I do math, I
But
don't.
that's not a math question.
Well, it's a logic. It's
a logic question.
It's a contextual question.
Right.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So I operate when I do math, I operate within the logic of math.
Sure.
Yes, exactly. When I operate within geography, I abide by addresses.
Sure.
Cool. Now we're just saying that doesn't correspond with some universal truth.
Given how much of your audience are Rand fans, why haven't you actually sat down and read any Ayn Rand?
Well, I just haven't gotten around to it. She's written a lot of books. I don't have the time.
Okay. Have you read my hero, a lot of Camille Paglia?
I haven't really read her. I've listened to her.
Okay,
Yeah.
because she thinks Foucault, Derrida, and Lacan are like the Antichrist figures, and not in a good way.
Yeah, she makes no sense to me when she talks about that.
Okay, what have you gleaned? And
Well,
why
you
do
tell me. I
disagree?
can't remember exactly, but would you tell me what her beef is? And
I think her beef is that when looking at, and this is something you haven't touched upon yet, when looking at the great arts and literatures of the world, if you are only looking at it through this very specific lens of like power structure and things like that, it's kind of masturbatory.
power structures. What
Yeah, meaning like, okay, this what's the oppression inherent in this book?
Right. So this is a complete misunderstanding.
Okay.
Derrida, Foucault, et cetera. I mean, this is not what they talk about. The idea is that they are trashing all of Western civilization and saying that it's all just a fight and a power struggle, and therefore it's all shit and it's oppressive. That's not what they say at all.
Okay.
They have said that truth claims historically, especially Foucault says this, truth claims historically, usually, not always, but usually have been used to manipulate, exploit, manage, control people.
100% true.
Great.
Indisputably true.
So we're cool. Yeah, so that's that.
But that's not all he says. It's not one sentence in his work.
Well, no, that is the gist of that is Foucault's entire argument, as a matter of fact. So
There's a difference between saying
she's fundamentally misreading Foucault if she thinks.
So let me clarify
Okay.
what I think she's saying. There's a difference between saying this is a technique that has historically been used and this is inevitable and universal. So is he saying that all art and literature and truth claims are used as a mechanism of domination?
God, no.
Okay.
No,
so it's just a tendency that has historically happened.
Yeah. No, not at all. He would never say such a thing. No, he would say that power flows through society in various ways. It flows laterally between people. It flows from top to bottom. And also he says from bottom to top, which was a very key insight because that was opposed to Marxism, by the way, right?
Right.
He's an anti-Marxist. Another misunderstanding. Foucault and Derrida were anti-Marxist. At least their work was anti-Marxist, and that's why Marxists hate their guts, as a matter of fact. Noam Chomsky thinks they're absolutely bullshit. Frederick Jameson, famous Marxist at Duke, wrote an entire book arguing that postmodernism distracts from the real work of revolution in politics. Yeah, no. So, no, their argument is that not so much art they're concerned about. They're concerned about the use of psychiatry, for instance, to label people mentally ill, right? Which included all sorts of people, including women who were promiscuous and people who were free thinkers and people who had
or just calling someone racist, meaning heretic, and then you don't have to talk to them anymore.
Exactly.
Right.
And then they get stuck in a mental asylum or a prison.
Sure.
Right. So that's where that's where Foucault's work started. He wrote a history of the asylum in which he argued that. Very, very libertarian book, by the way. Madness and Civilization. I recommend that everyone read that.
Is this like Thomas Zah's?
It's the same year, 1961.
Okay.
Same year as Thomas Sah's his book, The Myth of Mental Illness. They came out the same year, and they've often been compared together.
Okay.
Now, that's why I was arguing last night at the Soho Forum that libertarians need to take a really close look at postmodernism because postmodernism is their best friend.
Do you think that postmodernism is a better friend to libertarianism than objectivism, and why?
Very much so. For this reason, because as we said, in mental asylums, all these people were locked away for simply having free ideas, dissident ideas, even ideas like, being anti-war or being for free markets, right? Many people like that were tossed away.
Emma Goldman, 100 years ago, this year, was deported as an American citizen from the United States because of her anarchist views.
That's exactly right. But what happened with medical science was that those people were pathologized as well, right?
Correct.
It wasn't just that they were incorrect or evil. It was that they were pathologized. There was some mental defect. Homosexuality was considered to be a mental illness, as you know. And so those people were locked away. They were sterilized. They were lobotomized, all the rest of it, right? Because science said they were essentially, and this is a very key point, essentially, naturally, biologically prone to those behaviors, right? That's who they are. They were aberrant, and it was immutable, and that was determined by their nature.
So do you think homosexuality can be cured?
I mean, it can be cured. I mean, some people can choose, I suppose, to become non-homosexual.
But you're saying it's not immutable.
Right.
So it can be cured.
Well, cured is a word I wouldn't use.
Treated. Changed.
Changed is one I would.
Okay,
Yes,
so you
sure,
think... Okay.
Changed.
So
cured suggests that it was an illness, right?
Well, it's unpopular statistically.
I would not. Yeah, it's not an illness, but it can be changed. Sure.
So do you?
Well, that's true. I mean, people's sexuality have changed all the time. People have moved from homosexual to heterosexual and back.
That's internally, though, not externally.
Where else would it be?
Meaning, it's someone's doing it independently as opposed to someone having it kind of done to them.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no. I mean,
do you believe in the blank slate?
I don't know. Again, I don't know. How can we find that out? How can we prove or disprove that?
Do you act as if you believe in the blank slate?
I am sympathetic to that position. Yes. But I'm agnostic on it. I don't know for sure.
Alcoholism has a genetic component?
I know. I'm a good example. So I've been sober for 7 years. I used to drink problematically for many, many years. People called me an alcoholic. I fit the definition of alcoholism in this country very much. I stopped drinking 7 years ago. It was difficult for a couple weeks. I haven't wanted to drink since. So I don't know if I'm an alcoholic, because the common conception is that you're always an alcoholic. You're always going to be one step. If you take one sip of whiskey, you're going to be going on a bender, and that's the end of it, right? That's not been my experience. It's not been the experience of other people. And also, I will tell you that alcoholism, this concept, was invented by this guy, Benjamin Rush, in this country. He was one of the founding fathers. And he wrote a book about it, which was completely made up. He just came out. He didn't do any research. He didn't study anybody. And even if he had, it was simply his idea. The idea was that there's this thing that's a disease called alcoholism, and it's permanent, and the only cure for it is lifelong abstinence, right? That's how all AA treats it as well. That's all made up. I am not at all convinced that's true. I've known many people who have been considered alcoholics who have then who have stopped drinking and then started drinking again and drink non-problematically.
Do you think homosexuality has a genetic component?
No.
What about twin studies?
What about them?
Meaning twins that are raised separately or twins that are raised
Twin studies
apart?
are all over the map. There is no consistent results there.
So
there is no consensus about what twin studies say.
You don't think
there's big debates about that.
Okay. I was not aware of that. Yeah. Do you think that intelligence has a genetic component?
Possibly.
Okay.
Possibly not, right? I mean, so,
let's talk about that, because you did a lot of research.
Siblings, you know this. I mean, there are many siblings who have very different levels of intelligence.
Oh yeah, my sister's not that
There
bright.
you go, right. And same with my brother.
Let's talk about, you've done a research on history of IQ, if I'm not mistaken.
Have I?
Well, just you talked about how IQ was used as this is a good example of what you're talking about, changing truth claims. How back in the day, IQ, these people are the stupid ones, and now, 50 years later, they're the smart
written about
ones.
that, but I've talked about it. Yeah, I'm aware of it, yes.
Yeah,
So yeah, right, exactly. So IQ, one of the interesting things about IQ, this is one way to debunk it right off the bat, is that IQs have changed over time. So IQs have risen, generally speaking, in the population over the last, 70 or 80 years, right?
Right.
So then what the hell does it mean? If you can learn to be smarter, then that means it's not inborn.
Well, no, doesn't that mean you have the capacity to learn?
Okay, but that's not what most people who believe in IQ believe. They believe that we're born with this particular ability, right?
With this capacity.
That you can measure.
Yes.
Yeah. And so if not just individuals, but whole populations, which is what we're talking about, like the general IQ of Americans has risen dramatically over the last 100 years.
Right.
Right, among all groups.
Right.
Right? So then it's clearly not innate.
But that's me. It just means it could be that we're selecting for intelligence.
It could mean, through eugenics?
Yeah.
But we haven't.
That's not, you don't know that. First of all,
we tried briefly, but we haven't done that.
Intelligence correlates well with income, and income correlates with getting laid.
Okay.
So it's going to be eugenics, not directly.
But also apparently we can learn to have a higher IQ by learning. So that means it's not innate, it's not inborn. It is mutable. It is mutable.
Mutability, having something with a genetic component is not the same thing as having something genetically determined. For example, height. Height is a factor, is genetically has a component, but it's also nutrition.
Okay, well, that's I like that. That's sort of a liberal, flexible view of IQ, but that is not what most people who believe in IQ believe.
Okay.
They believe that if you're born dumb, you're going to stay dumb.
I'm not talking about most people. I'm talking about me and you. Okay. I'm asking you, do you think that most people, or that there's a genetic component to intelligence?
Maybe.
Are you, okay. So what are you comfortable saying that there's a genetic component?
And the reason I say maybe is because there's so much counter evidence for that. And then the big one is that it's changed over time, which suggests that people can learn, be taught to raise their IQ, right? So that tells me that it's not so inborn, it's not so innate. If they can so easily rise as an entire population by many, many points over just 100 years, that tells me it's not so innate.
But height has changed dramatically over. Do you disagree height has a genetic component?
Maybe. Again, there's so many exceptions, it's hard to say.
But that's a bell curve. There's going to be data points, 2 standard deviations above the mean, below the mean.
Now, again, within the logic of the world I inhabit, based on what I see and what I've understood and what I've been taught, it looks that way.
Do you think strength,
it looks that way?
Do you think there's a correlation between strength and biological sex?
It's just like rapid fire. Do I believe
these aren't hard questions? I don't think.
What's that?
I don't think these are tough questions.
No, it's just a whole lot of them coming at me at once.
I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from. This is an alien thought process.
I got you. Yeah. I just did this last night, and I didn't eat breakfast, but anyway, it's fine. There could biological sex and strength. So this is a whole can of worms in itself. Biological sex. What is that? Those are labels, right?
Okay.
What we did was we said people, actually, and this has changed over time as well. People with X, Y, and Z characteristics, we're going to call male, and people with A, B, and C characteristics, we're going to call female, right? Now, those characteristics have changed over time since ancient Greece when they started to categorize people as male and female. And in fact, there have been third sexes along the way, too, and sometimes fourth sexes. And then you look in a lot of countries in Asia, there are 4, 5, 6, or 7 sexes and genders, right, that they consider to be immutable and biological and natural.
Sure.
Okay, so then who's right and who's wrong?
Okay, so if you took 2 people, one who is XX and one who is XY, do you think statistically it is very highly likely that the XY person will be significantly stronger?
Within the logic we operate in, yes.
Okay.
That's what's happened, yes. But that still leaves questions about what is true eternally.
I'm not talking about it. I don't believe in eternity. We're only got a short period of time here.
But that's what truth means. That's a truth claim. That's what it is. You're making a claim about something being always and everywhere.
No, I'm not.
All right. Well, then we're fine.
Then
your definition of truth doesn't bother me. That's
and there was not even such an implication.
When?
What if I say that men are stronger than women? There is no implication whatsoever. This is going to be eternally true or has been eternally true.
Okay, great. But that's, as you know, truth claims have been deployed in such a way that within them is this claim that they are eternal. Like the original truth claims, of course, are religious, right?
But that's like saying because people have shot like their wives with a gun, therefore I'm going to do something.
So again,
what relevance is that?
We're cool if you don't agree with that, but I'm just saying truth has been generally thought of that way, that it applies to all people in all times.
Yes, people use language in nasty, nefarious, and incorrect ways. Right. So, but what relevance is that, though, here?
What relevance is that?
Yeah.
Because that's much of the way much of the world has been constructed around that idea.
This isn't much of the world. This is me and you talking.
Okay, we're cool then.
But I still don't understand why you would bring that up.
I didn't. You did.
You just said that this is. I'm implicitly making an internal claim.
About what?
About men versus women and strength. Where was the implication that I was making an eternal truth claim?
I don't know. I guess I misunderstood you.
Given how much of your audience are Rand fans, why haven't you actually sat down and read any Ayn Rand?
I just don't like vampire books.
Okay. Why do you think then postmodernism tends to be so correlated with far left thinkers?
Great. Okay, so this is where a huge misunderstanding has happened, and this is the fault of Jordan Peterson and to a lesser degree this guy Stephen Hicks, who I debated last night, and Sam Harris and other people in the so-called intellectual dark web. So what happened was in the 2012, 2013, this SJW thing happened, right? on college campuses where I was, and I was in the midst of it. I saw all of it. And what that was a lot of kids mostly, and some of their professors, enablers, were saying, you were born black, and that means X, Y, and Z about you.
Right.
And on the other hand, this guy, Michael Malice, was born white or Jewish, whatever it was, and this means A, B, and C about him, right? Usually negative in your case, right? Those are essentialist claims, right?
Yes.
That is absolutely contrary, you should understand now, to postmodernism. Absolutely the opposite of it. Foucault's rolling around in his grave, seeing this go on. And so Jordan Peterson nonetheless gets up and starts screaming about how postmodernism is the cause of SJW politics and the end of civilization also. Complete bullshit. It's just the opposite. This is one of the big misconceptions I need to clear up. That this crazy SJW stuff on campus is actually is exactly the stuff that the postmodernists were trying to overthrow. Essentialist claims about human bodies.
You know how Marx said he's not a Marxist?
Yes.
So do these people not perceive themselves to be postmodernists?
Who's
The social justice warriors.
Right, exactly. And show me evidence of any of these SJWs on campus using that term to describe it.
So they do not perceive themselves as postmodernists.
I've never heard any of them say that. Right?
Okay.
It's very weird why they got labeled with this by people like Jordan Peterson, because maybe they have, but I've never seen any of them use that term. Never seen any of them cite Foucault or Derrida. I mean, if anyone has, let me know.
Well, don't you agree that how ideas permeate a culture is you have the thinkers, and then you have the academics, and by the time it reaches the masses, it's just, cliched phrases, and they have no idea where it came from.
I think that's what happened on college campuses. Let's remember, these are 19 and 20-year-old kids.
Correct.
Right? Don't know a goddamn thing. Well, I agree completely. Some of the slogans, jargon, some of the words that have been used by postmodernism, I suppose, have been co-opted by them. I keep having trouble with this mic. But not the politics, not what they're saying. It's just the opposite. What they're saying is, because of the way you were born, Michael Malice, you are going to be an oppressor, right?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Because the way I'm born as a black person or a woman, I will always be the victim, right? That's their argument. It's this essentialist, eternalist claim there, right?
No, I don't know if they would say it's eternalist. I would say it's a function of American society, and that can be changed.
I'm saying that's what they're arguing, though, right? When you're born black, that means that you are this way forever. This is Ta-Nehisi Coates' whole argument, that racism is forever in America. Anyone should read this book. Everyone should read this book. It's a horrible book, and that's the horrible claim in it. And it is absolutely contrary to postmodernism, which says that things like race and racism have changed over time radically. And you know this from my book,
of course,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the problem here. There's this fundamental misunderstanding that this garbage coming out of college campuses has something to do with postmodernism, when in fact it's a total repudiation of it.
But I still don't understand why postmodernism correlates so strongly with far leftism.
But it doesn't.
You're saying if you did a poll of postmodern academics, they wouldn't all identify as hard left?
Well, it depends on who you mean by postmodern. So Foucault and Derrida did start off as Marxists and socialists, but so did I.
Sure.
So did a lot of people, and they rejected it early on in their career, especially Foucault. But there have been some philosophers, French philosophers, who have been identified as postmodernists, who I believe were trying to sort of smuggle in Marxism through this. And that's where Peterson and company are somewhat correct. Those thinkers tend to be very minor and not well studied and not well cited. But Foucault and Derrida are the main guys. Lyotard also as well. Not Marxists at all, not left-wing in any traditional sense. And in fact, the left hates their guts.
Well, the left also hates other leftists.
I mean, smart left, the people who actually read them and understand this. The real Marxists, they hate their guts. As Noam Chomsky is a notorious anti-postmodernist. Frederick Jameson is this professor at Duke who wrote a whole book arguing that postmodernism just distracts us from the real work of revolution and politics. So Marxists hate it.
What would a postmodernist America look like?
There's no such thing. I mean, I don't know what that means. I can't answer that question. It is simply a way of being. It's an orientation to the world. It's being, again, always skeptical and essentially agnostic about all questions.
Okay,
which is quite liberating.
Sure, and I can
and liberatory.
Yes, there's an overlap with my great hero Camus, which is once you recognize the inherent absurdity of life, it is actually liberating. Yes, because now you're not trapped by certain constraints that you had believed previously.
And we might be wrong, about everything. Anything and everything. We, I, you, us as a society, me individually, could be wrong about anything and everything. Why not? Because everything has been overthrown, revised, and discarded.
I don't think that that's really. I think things revised and discarded are not synonymous.
That's right. They're not. Those are two different things that have been done to truth claims.
Right. And again, the idea that just because, you know how here's an example dealing with kind of your book.
Mm-hmm.
There's an argument I find very specious about a pro-immigrant argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, where they said, well, they were wrong about the Eastern Europeans and they were wrong about the Italians then, therefore they're wrong about the Mexicans now. And it's like, that makes no sense rationally. You could have been wrong then and right now, or right then and wrong now. I mean, one has no correlation with the other. So the point is, just because everyone's been wrong in the past, wrong about everything, doesn't even imply that I'm wrong about any specific thing at this moment.
But we could be.
Correct.
That's all I'm saying. We could be.
But there's a difference between saying, okay, I think this is almost certainly true, and I have no idea. And it seems like it's bouncing between throwing your hands in the air and kind of having an asterisk.
So I have written books, right, which use evidence, which use logic,
Sure.
which use reason, which use rational thinking, right? And I play by the games of, modern academic scholarship, which is not postmodernism at all, right?
Okay.
What I'm saying is I'm telling a story there. I'm
Okay.
telling a story, and I'm using the ways that academic historians, modernist academic historians, tell stories. So I'm simply telling stories to put out into the world to sort of maybe hopefully get people to abide by it or agree with it and change their lives or change the way they operate in the world.
Okay.
I am not claiming that I'm saying the truth here.
Okay.
I'm saying, here's a story, you can like it or not. If you like it, great. If you don't, fine. That's all. But it is not necessarily true in any way, not truer or more real than any other history book.
I didn't realize you get a lot of shit online, like a lot.
Uh-huh.
And like people in my Facebook group had to point this out to me because
Yeah.
I am such a fan of your work.
Yeah.
How?
I see. This is why we're talking about postmodernism. Yes, they get very angry about this.
Not the postmodernists, just you.
Oh my gosh.
And
What about me?
I don't get it. So, do you deal with a lot of heat online? Because I deal with surprisingly little.
I got a ton of heat when I was on Joe Rogan.
Right. And
About this question, though.
Okay.
About postmodernism, but really is about gender and race being social constructs. I made that argument on Joe Rogan, and
Right.
boy, did I get millions of people screaming at me. And still, to this day, I get almost every day, I get some message from somebody saying, you fucking pussy, cuck, idiot. Of course, men and women are different.
right.
It's that level of stuff. That's what I get. Yeah, but otherwise, I don't get much heat. Just on that thing. Just on that, really just that appearance on Rogan.
I don't like infighting, but I do like drama.
Okay.
Okay. Can we talk about this? If you don't want to talk about this, we don't have to.
Fine.
You were on a podcast and you had this tweet calling the person out. Do you remember this?
What's that?
The host?
I don't remember. Who, what?
You were on a podcast and after the show, you were interviewed. You went on Twitter and you went after the host, not by name.
I may know what you're talking about. I'm not sure.
Okay, we don't have to talk about this.
No, there was a guy, I was on a show 6 months to a year ago, and it was fine. And then after that, he had another episode in which he psychoanalyzed me.
That's what I was talking about.
And yes, without giving me a chance to respond. And when I am psychoanalyzed and in order to be dismissed on someone else's show right after I've been on their show, when I certainly didn't do anything to deserve this, I find that incredibly offensive.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay.
I think,
and that's so I called him out on that. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That is. You would agree with me. I would never do that on my show, and I can't imagine you would either. Unless they insulted you or something, which I certainly did not.
Even if they did insult me, psychoanalysis is not going to win me the argument.
Yeah.
And one of my tricks is I almost never, people are going to laugh, but think about it for a second. I almost never get personal because
Right.
Unless I just really want to never talk to this person
Right,
again.
me too.
Because it's not as efficacious as certain other techniques
Sure.
that you can use.
Sure.
And I will totally drink the psychoanalysis Kool-Aid, postmodernist Kool-Aid on this one. The idea that I've met someone for an hour and I'm going to have access to his inner mind.
Exactly.
And, he must think this because of this little information I have about his biography.
Right.
I had to block someone on Twitter because there was some comment I made. I don't remember what it was. And the person was like, well, it could just be that he has to think this way because he's Jewish. And it's like,
Right.
I can't win with you if you've already decided,
Right.
even though this is consistent with everything else, that, oh, well, it's a function of being Jew, as if I'm some kind of as if I'm like basically
Yeah.
the median Jew. So yeah, I mean, how did you find out about that?
So do I get heat about that? Is that what you're saying?
No,
Oh.
this was a separate subject.
okay.
I was saying I hate hit and
Gotcha.
fighting, but I like drama.
Yes.
I wanted to kind of delve into what the drama
I mean, it was a very minor podcast. I didn't really care about it. I forgot about it after that happened. That's why I can't even remember much of what he said. But it was infuriating. And, I can't remember how he psychoanalyzed me in particular.
And
but
I'm just going to interrupt you because you would have no problem with me asking you, hey, did this inform this or that?
yeah.
And then you'd be like,
that's
no,
different.
right, exactly.
Oh, no,
it's very different.
But if you said, and you would never do this, but if you said, oh, and this has happened to me, is, you're just acting out an Oedipal struggle with your parents because that's why you're anti-left wing because my parents were left wing. I get that all the time.
You
and
don't
I wanna,
know me.
I know. I want to punch people.
You
when they
don't
do
know
that.
me.
It is seriously fighting words.
Yes.
When you do that. Yes. Thank you. It is dismissive. It is insulting, and they don't know me.
I
Now,
hate presumptuousness.
If we were best friends and you know me really, really well, and you knew the whole history of my family, and we were talking face to face, even on a podcast, and you said something like, "Well, are you so angry about socialism because your parents were socialists?"
No, what
I would say
is-
maybe, yeah.
Or I would
That'd
say,
be
have you
fine.
considered?
Sure.
Or how has this informed?
No problem.
And that is very fair.
Which anybody who's listened to my show, Unregistered, knows that's what I do all the time.
it's a
But that's
very fair
completely
question.
different. This guy, this was a next episode. I wasn't even on it, and he starts railing about me and thinking he has these ideas about. He's basically just trying to dismiss what I was saying by psychoanalyzing me. I forget what he said. Or something. Maybe it might have been with my parents.
But even if you're the Joker, that has no relevance to what you're saying.
I agree. It's garbage. Don't do this, people.
Yeah, it's really.
It's terrible.
Although I will do it in one case, not in individuals when they're dealing with classes of people, because NPCs specifically, when there's many people who don't actually have a mind, and when they all you're laughing, but I'm serious.
What do you mean they don't have?
I'll give you an example.
Okay.
There's this on Twitter. There are certain people, and this is on the right and on the left, who will not only have the same response, they will have the same response verbatim. And this is not someone who's capable of critical thought, but they are basically repeating talking points. I'll give you one example. It was just shocking to see. I had a poll, which you may have seen. I said, who would you rather have, of these two, who would you rather have babysitting your 12-year-old daughter? Bill Clinton or Casey Anthony? Right? And many cretins came in and jumped in. They go, 3, Trump. Not realizing that would be a compliment to Trump.
Right.
That would mean he is the most trustworthy of these 3, and this is who you want. But they're so programmed that any visceral reaction is Trump, Trump, Trump. This is not a mind.
Right.
So when it comes to someone like that, I'm comfortable with being dismissive and air quotes psychoanalyzing. But again, I do not see that person as an individual.
Well, you're not really psychoanalyzing.
Okay.
You're just saying they're stupid.
No, it's not. They're often very bright.
What's your psychoanalysis of those people?
That there's no mind there.
Oh, that's not really psychoanalysis.
Sure. That's all I'm saying. That's my exception.
We agree on this.
Okay.
Yeah, don't psychoanalyze people to dismiss them, guys. That's the main thing.
And you're not going to...
It's really... I find it just infuriating.
It's also lazy.
Yeah, completely. It's anti-intellectual, it's lazy, and it's unfair, and it's... Ugh. Yeah, I actually threatened to punch someone once when he did that to me. It was it was one of the Jacobin guys.
Oh God.
One of the commies in the Jacobins. Yeah. He said, yeah, you're hanging out with all these libertarians because you have mommy issues, because you're mad at your mom because she was a socialist.
Then you should say I'm mad at your mom because she keeps using teeth.
Exactly.
If someone brings up your family, your gloves are off.
Exactly.
Motherfucker.
I said, and I'd never met him in person either. And I said, I look forward to meeting you in person someday, Connor.
Yeah.
Kilpatrick.
Yeah, good.
I do.
We're running out of time.
Yeah.
What? Oh, for his 2 things. Hold on.
This has been a helter-skelter of an interview.
Did you see that picture? My friend has a beautiful daughter named Ina. And there's a photo of my Instagram of her in my lap. She's adorable, reading her Helter Skelter. What are you working on next? You've been working on another book for quite a long time.
Quite a long time. It's because my publisher wanted me to write the entire history of America in the world. So it was not just American foreign policy since the beginning, but also, and this is my original piece in it, the history of the dissemination of American popular culture across the world. And the argument is that things like jazz and blue jeans and Marilyn Monroe has subverted authoritarian regimes across the world much more quickly than any American military intervention.
That is the thesis of the new right.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Some of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
tell me more.
make this exact... You didn't read it?
I've read pieces of it. The ones about me.
Well, this is about you.
You say that in there? Oh, yes, you do. Right, of course. I'm
course
sorry.
I give
And
you
you said that
credit.
on Rogan, too. You also,
Yes,
yeah,
of
yeah,
course.
I'm sorry. Yes.
And I think I think more people should be giving people credit because it costs you
Yeah,
nothing.
and North Korea, Jungmadong, and the whole thing. Yes.
But
You're all over this.
When I was interviewing Jared Taylor, your hero,
yeah?
your boyfriend,
do love him.
yeah, and he was, asking all these questions.
He's hot.
Real hunk.
Yeah.
And we're talking about low culture.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, well, I don't care about low culture. I'm like, you can't be for the masses.
Right.
They're never going to be. I know classical music was for the masses historically, but whatever.
Right.
The point being, it is low culture that saves that how America conquered the world.
Yes.
I make this point in the book.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And
Yes.
the point being, you don't have to persuade anyone about capitalism versus communism. All that has to happen is that woman in the Soviet Union has to turn on the TV and watch a shit show, Dynasty or
Correct.
Dallas being the greatest television show of all time.
Correct.
Dynasty, not so
And
good.
the most popular in the Soviet Union, I think. Yes.
And
yes.
see, I'm wiping my ass with literal newspaper, and that maid, who is a minority and therefore treated worse in America, I'm told,
Yep.
has a fur coat and a car.
Yep.
I don't care about Marx or George Washington
No
or
doubt.
Reagan.
Yep.
I want that.
That's right.
That's all it comes down to.
That's right.
And it is the most peaceful form of imperialism.
Yep. And if you go to Iran, Donald Trump, listen to this. If you go to Iran or Tehran or any of the cities in Iran, you'll see every single apartment building there just studded with satellite dishes. And what are they doing?
yeah.
They're streaming in TV from the West.
Yeah.
They're streaming in porn. Sex is the most searched for term on Google in Pakistan. So that's the revolution right there.
Bin Laden's hideout was a porn hub.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So Islam, I think, has a shelf life, or I should say, political Islam
Yes.
has a shelf life,
Yeah.
short shelf life in the Middle East, which is great news.
So what's the progress of the book?
I am working. I have about 2 chapters left. I have 11 written, and so this year it will be written, and hopefully it will be published by election time next year.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah, is
Is
right.
it called A Renegade History of the World?
Nope, that's not a bad idea. We're working on a title. We're having trouble with a title.
Is it? Call it the N-word.
Just the N-word? Negligent? I have been negligent according to my publisher.
We're running out of time.
Yeah.
What has been your favorite part of this interview?
Oh my God. It was a tough start, man. You didn't let me eat breakfast, and I'm tired and I'm stressed out, and you start hectoring me about postmodernism. It's funny. Our fans love when we talk. But there's always tension between us.
That's your favorite part of the interview?
I know I didn't answer the question. Let's
take this again. We're running out of time.
My favorite favorite part
hold
of
on. This is the teaser we use.
Yeah.
We're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of
I
this
see.
interview?
This is part of your thing. What has been my favorite part of the interview? It's just been all great, Michael. I don't know what to say. I can't pick one point.
You are welcome.